Welcome back to the How to Get a Guy in 10 Ways podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Markham.
And I'm Danielle Hanlon.
And today we're bringing two guests. That's right, two at the same time. A couple who's been married for 39 mostly happy years together. Their names are Richard and Darcie Payne. And we just brought them on because we really wanted them to recount all these years of experience they had being married, being intentional that they're still dating their spouse, then also way back when, 39 years ago or so. I'm just kidding. I'm just trying to make them feel a little old, but make enough old jokes about themselves that I don't actually have to make many jokes at all. But we wanted to know what made them keep dating each other from the very beginning on so that they could help listeners understand what to do on a first date, how to thrive on the first few dates, because that can be a nerve-wracking time when you're just starting out, just starting to see someone. So, Richard and Darcie, please give us just a brief overview of the timeline of your dating relationship, how that went.
Well, we actually met at a group function through our church for young adults. And so there was a bunch of people around, and Darcie kind of caught my eye, and we went on our first date literally 40 years ago on February 7th, just a few days ago.
Yeah. And here's our timeline. So it's not very long. We met in January, and then we went on our first date after I caught his eye, as he mentioned, at this function we were at. So we went on our first date on February 7th, and then I think we dated 2 weeks later, and then every week after that, and then we got engaged in July and saw each other every day, and then we were married in November.
So pretty fast timeline, yeah. But we were already 25 and 27 and kind of knew what we were looking for, I guess.
We thought we were very old and seasoned.
So, Richard, what was it about Darcie that caught your eye and made you want to keep dating her after you went on your first date?
So Darcie mentioned kind of our fast timeline. On our first date, we actually did a Minnesota thing in the winter. We went to an ice palace, and after walking through an ice palace and talking, we went to a restaurant and had a nice dinner, and then went dancing. And so kind of worked all that out. So we talked a lot about who we are and who our families are and what our background was. And so I felt very comfortable with Darcie, and it was really easy to be together with that first date. So I thought, well, I want to really get to know more about her, and asked her out on a second date, which led to the third date, which led to a fourth date, which led eventually to engagement and marriage. And so we just enjoyed being around one another, and we did things that made us talk with one another. We didn't have cell phones at the time, and so I would probably suggest not having your cell phone readily available on a first or second date today, because it really did make us talk and enjoy one another. And that's the thing that kept playing in my head, was we had some commonalities, we had some differences, and we just got to know each other a little bit more through these first 4, 5, 6 dates.
That's great advice, to not have your phone readily available, because also that feeling of you're talking and then someone glances at your phone, you just know they have checked out either momentarily or for a while. And you're like, did you hear anything I just said? But something really interesting that Hinge, the dating website, is now releasing every year is an annual report. So this is available online for anyone who wants to view it, and they kind of keep track of the trends that they're seeing on their website. So I'm just going to read this one excerpt from that report, because this is where we're going with this whole episode. It says, assumptions around gender are adding to this disconnect. 42% of heterosexual Gen Z women feel like the people they date don't want deep conversation on the first few dates. Yet 65% of Gen Z heterosexual men say they do. For Gen Z men, it's due to pressures on how they will be perceived. 48% of holding back from emotional intimacy because they don't want to seem like too much. Gen Z doesn't think their dates ask enough questions, so closing the question deficit can make for better dates and stronger connections. In fact, 85% of daters are more likely to want a second date when they are asked thoughtful questions. I thought that was so interesting. So, people nowadays seem to be very focused on feeling the spark, if you will, early on in dating. So, Richard and Darcie, either one of you want to cover this question, but what are your thoughts on if that mindset is helping them or if it's harming them, if they're searching really hard for that spark in the first couple dates?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely important to have a spark with whoever, especially if it turns into a long-term relationship. But I think that to focus on this, like looking for the spark and that be your focus, can be really harmful, especially in those initial dates that you have. Those first dates, there's nerves, there's pressure on first impression, and that spark may come, but it may go as well. So I think, like what Richard had said, that getting to know the person, your similarities, your differences, things that are interesting about each other is really helpful in keeping momentum in the relationship. So you're not just focusing on chemistry or a spark.
And obviously, there was enough spark on both of our sides to want to keep dating from the very get go. As Darcie said, it was a pretty fast timeline, and we did go out a lot. And so there was that spark, but we wanted to make sure, especially me, I wanted to make sure that we got to know one another. I'm not a natural person who's just going to sit there and talk for 2 hours. I don't do well at just sitting and talking. I can move and talk, and I can ask some questions. And so, that's how we literally got to know one another. Is we kept the physical out of it for probably 4 or 5, 6, 7 dates before we even held hands and kissed, but we probably held hands before that.
Yeah.
We did say we were old at the beginning of this mass podcast. So,
I did say I was old. I just want to throw that out there.
But I do remember that we wanted to let the intimacy of getting to know one another come before any kind of real physical contact with kissing and whatnot. Does that sound old?
No, I don't think it's old.
Sounds good.
What is the difference between old and wise? More so wise.
Speak for yourself.
That was wise.
Old. What's the other word for ancient?
What's the other word for absolutely ancient?
For like so
decrepit, would it be?
It's beyond old. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Just so far past old. Old might not cover it. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's really important. I also think for listeners that when we're talking about this spark, I think there's like two different things. Sometimes it's like that kind of anxious butterflies feeling in the pit of your stomach. Sometimes I also think it's combined with just that dopamine rush of like, oh, this person's really cute. But since we have that constantly on our phones and at our fingertips, I think sometimes when people are like, I'm just not feeling the spark, I think our dopamine, we're just constantly getting dopamine from so many things that you might just not be able to differentiate that dopamine hit from like a good date right at first or something else because of just the way our brains are wired now and the way the world is working. So I think that the spark or what you consider to be like maybe excitement to see someone again is important. But then it's also important to remember for people who are like, a whole generation of us that are addicted to our phones and technology and having things at instantly, that you may have to really like sit and think, am I feeling that spark? So just some thoughts to be aware of if that's what people, I've heard it as well too, Jenny, with my friends. I know a lot of people you like are like, there was just no spark. Sometimes it can also take time. Maybe it takes a couple dates to like have that spark, and then you're like, oh wow, now they're irresistible to me. Or however.
You just don't want to pull the plug too soon
No,
without
never
letting
pull
some
the
time pass so that the spark could develop.
exactly.
Oh,
Life
the
advice.
plug and the spark. I didn't even put that together. Wow,
That
I'm
was
so
genius,
good.
Jenny.
I'm
I was
so
gonna say
good.
good life advice is just never pull the plug too soon.
Jimmy, you're just an engine.
It's kind of like a DNR, but also like dating too.
Yeah, exactly. If you take anything from our dating podcast, do not pull the plug
Do
too
not
soon.
resuscitate.
Make sure it's time.
Might get a spark.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly.
So there's
So
plenty of spark.
Yeah, yeah.
plenty of spark. So, Darcie and Richard, what are some practical ideas for activities that you could do on the first couple of dates? And listeners, this is the question that made us want to ask Richard and Darcie to be our guests on this podcast, because we got to journey with Darcie and Richard through a whole folder that Richard still has of things from their early dating and lists of date ideas. And Jenny and I were just so impressed. We were like, we've got to have them on this podcast. We've got to know. So we'd love to ask, what are some practical ideas for activities that you guys did that you think are good ideas that just help listeners know what can you do on a first date?
Yeah. So with that thought in mind, let me tell you, we still date each other even after 40 years of marriage. And so that's really critical. But I call it creative dating. It's not an original term. I learned it. And like I mentioned, even today, I do creative dating planning. I mentioned a little bit about our first date. Well, our second and third dates, well, one was going to the Science Museum. Again, it's just exploring stuff and learning what makes other people tick and what excites them. Our third date was, so second date was Science Museum. The third date was literally in the middle of a frozen bay near where we live today, actually. We took a kite and went kite flying, walking in the middle of a frozen lake, and just again enjoying time together and and chatting and laughing and having a good time.
And I was like, and we brought a tripod because there wasn't anybody on the lake to take a picture. I'm like, who is this guy? That's what kept me coming back. I'm like,
Yeah.
who is a
This
guy?
guy's just so bizarre. I just have to see
Right.
more about this. What is this?
I know. I'm like, this, I've never met anybody like this.
That's right. And so
But what I see in common with all of those is that all of those activities also gave you room to talk, and there weren't any, not that you didn't mention any movie dates. You also didn't mention going to a coffee shop and just sitting down and looking at each other for like a long time.
Right.
Yeah, and you know that's taking a walk. Like I classify these things as kind of like if money's a concern, here's what you can do. You can go and do the three things I just said. The only thing we had to pay for was entrance to the ice castle and maybe dinner. So they were you know, the first 3 days were certainly inexpensive. But money's a concern. You know, you go for a walk, you go for a hike, you go for a bike ride. You know, even window shopping in a mall, especially if it has high-end stores, you can just kind of sit there and talk about what really is cool about a given store and what they're selling. One thing that we still find funny is, and it's definitely not a first, second, or third date thing, but you know, going to a store that has a rack or two of greeting cards. You know, so hey, you know, if it was your birthday today, here's the greeting card I would give you, and then have Darcie read it. And we've actually done this on our anniversary and just said, hey, or around
Here's
our
the
anniversary.
greeting card, and then we put them back in the slot.
In the slot. Here's the
Yeah.
greeting card I would have given you. Now, we usually make greeting cards, or I write a poem for Darcie on every anniversary or on her birthday. So I try to be creative that way. and whatnot. But, we've even done a bottle of wine and a sunset for a date. That's really cool. That particular date, it was on one of our recent vacations, maybe a couple, 3 years ago. And, we just planned it. I looked up some sunset spots in the place that we happened to be, and man, it was an unbelievable sunset. So things like things that exist on the internet today to say, tell me the best sunset spots in city X. That's a simple date right there. We've been on a picnic date. The first Darcie's first birthday that I was part of her life. I did a picnic date in a park, probably 10 or 15 minutes from where we currently live, because we've always lived around the Twin Cities from that perspective. But again, what we tried to do the first couple of months, maybe the first 4 months, was trying to not have anybody entertain us per se, like a movie or a play or a musical, because I love all of those things too, as does Darcie. And so we enjoy that kind of entertainment, but I wanted the entertainment literally to be, let's get to know one another, because I had been in past relationships. Again, it seems like 100 years ago now, because I haven't had a first date for a long time. But it got
Nor
too
have
physical.
I.
Yeah. Yeah.
Darcie's like, speak
Just
for
to
yourself.
clarify, nor have I.
That's right.
Because he has it, and I thought I'd just make
But,
sure.
sometimes it would get too physical too fast. And I had learned just, if I really want to meet someone and know them, the physical has to stay out for a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I've noticed that in talking to married couples. I hear that same sentence a lot of like, well, in past relationships, it got too physical too fast, so I really wanted to get to know this person. And then I hear that from a lot of married couples, and it just kind of testifies to, well, this couple got married in the end, so
Yeah.
you got to know them on a deeper level.
Oh my gosh, one of our dates, I don't remember where it was in the sequence. I invited Darcie to come over and have dinner. And I knew at the time how to cook chicken 3 ways. And we laugh about this all the time still. A certain way to make chicken and a certain set of vegetables for each different way to make chicken.
Usually out of a can.
And Darcie said to me, once we got to know each other a lot better, she said, well, your chicken actually tastes the same no matter which way you make it.
It's the same.
So I'll say something
All
like,
3 ways taste exactly the same.
I'll say something like, today I'll say, hey, Darcie, you want me to make the lemon chicken recipe or do you want me to make the fried chicken recipe? And we just laugh because she knows I'm not going to do either. But anyway, she did not marry me for my chicken cooking capabilities.
Culinary skills,
yeah. Hit a happy hour. That's an easier way to have a less expensive date.
Yeah. I thought of too, like try something new that neither of you have tried before. Like ice skating or bowling or there's a lot of and there's actually a lot of little, like you can look I know like on Facebook and stuff, there'll be like events going on the weekend. There's tons of things to do in the Twin Cities for sure, but
one thing that we did, it was probably 3 months into dating, we got involved with our church on a specific project, and we each had different roles on that project. And man, that really helped us get to know one another and see each other in action.
Working together on something, a common thing is.
I gave Darcie this might have been our 5th or 6th date. I gave Darcie a little scavenger hunt to find me. And that told me whether or not she really wanted to go out with me anymore.
I never showed up.
No, you found me, you silly wife.
That's a bad sign.
No.
I'm just never.
So she found me faster than
sorry.
time. So that was good. So, it's just, I wrote little notes, and then after the first note, she got to the second note, and after the second note, got to the third note. Yeah, so I just would give her the clue.
The last thing was him. He was the prize.
That's right. So I was the surprise.
Yeah.
And she kept me.
I did.
The surprise was a 4th chicken recipe. I'm just kidding.
Tastes exactly the same.
Yeah, that's right.
Another thing we did, and it's really fun. I got 2 of my friends who were going out with young ladies at the same time. We all got together. I had to come up with this idea to defer some of the costs. We rented a limousine, picked up the ladies in a limousine, and went out to eat, and then went to a concert. So that probably that I think we were still dating, so that was probably a couple of months before we got married. So I just wanted to have a lot of fun with a triple date at the time, and these 2 guys were up to it, and it helped them in their exploration of creative dating, believe me. But yeah, so it's just try to do fun stuff, and we still do that today. Some of it costs money, and some of it doesn't.
It's so funny that Darcie, you mentioned, oh, try something that you guys have not tried before, and you mentioned ice skating. But that reminded me that Joe and I started dating like at the end of January, so Valentine's Day was coming up. And so we hadn't been dating that long before Valentine's Day came, and Joe recommended, why don't we go ice skating? I had been ice skating. He said he had been ice skating before. We got on the ice. He didn't tell me he didn't know how to ice skate. I was just going around the loop, and he's like fumbling. He's like clinging onto the wall. I was like, why didn't you say you didn't know how to ice skate? He was like, I just thought it'd be fun.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And you know
Yeah.
what? We did have a lot of fun. It didn't even matter that he didn't know how to ice skate.
Right. Yeah.
We haven't been ice skating since, but that's besides the point.
Oh, well, but you got it out of the way.
Exactly, we did. We checked it off the box.
Yeah.
And so those are amazing opportunities to do something, and the activities you do. And a lot of the anticipation leading up to a date is the other question of, well, what are we going to talk about? I hope this isn't awkward. And you're like praying on the way to the date, God, please don't make this awkward. I don't want to sit through an hour of awkwardness. So what are some ways that listeners could help facilitate a natural conversation, a fun conversation? And what are some good topics you can talk about on the first couple dates?
Yeah.
Great question. You have to make sure that you're not like just asking questions almost like you're in a job interview, but it's asking questions and then reacting to the answers so that the person feels heard, and also that you can have a follow-up question to that. So, I like to ask the question, what makes your heart sing? Other people might say it, what makes you tick? And just, it's a free form question. Hopefully it doesn't put anybody on the spot. Just questions like that. If you know that, if you don't know about their parents and they haven't said anything, how was it growing up with your mom and dad or your family? What's your grandfather, what's your grandfather's like? Things like that. Just something that allows you to find out a little bit about their family if they're willing to share.
Mm-hmm.
I love to ask, what's a favorite way that you would spend a day if you had no restrictions or boundaries to that day?
Mm-hmm.
And, that's what's funny. There's a very big difference in Darcie and me. Her answer to how would you spend a free day is way different than my answer. But that goes back to what I said earlier about we have similarities and we have differences, and that's what makes it work. So some days we'll spend a day that might be her favorite kind of day. Other days we'll spend a day that might be my favorite kind of day. What are some things you're really good at? And in your own mind, of course.
Right.
And then I like to ask, are you more planned or more spontaneous? Because there's a great tension in that. Like on the end of the spectrum is fully planned and or fully spontaneous, and then you can kind of see where each other is on that spectrum. And it's not bad to be at polar opposites, but you better know how crazy life could get at certain times because of the polar
Mm-hmm.
opposites.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. What's your favorite candy?
Yeah.
I'm a big sweet tooth, so
Yeah.
I know what Darcy's candy is, and she knows what mine is, and um, what's your favorite movie? It's just very simple questions.
Yeah. If you were stranded on a desert island, what would be the one food you would eat,
Yeah,
over and over again,
over
or
and over again.
yeah, different things that interest you. What's like favorite whatever is kind of a nice one, or your least favorite something, or
Yep.
concerts you've been to, or what kind of music do you like. And you don't want to have it be like, machine gun asking questions, but I think just things that are a reflection of who a person is, how they spend their time, yeah, what they like to do, and then you find common things. Because I know, like when we first met, I love just asking people about their families. I just think it's really interesting. It's a reflection of where they grew up, how many siblings they have, what their parents are like. It's just interesting. And we thought we had such similarities, but when you really boil it down, like we didn't. Like it was completely different. But we found like the little things that
Yeah.
that stuck out to us.
And we
Yeah,
both
yeah.
had great parents and great
Hmm.
childhood, so that wasn't a sticking point for us or a point of pain
Yeah,
or trauma. And so that's good. So I know that entering some of those conversations,
yeah, could be.
it could be tough on
Hmm.
certain folks. There's a book by a guy named Gary Chapman called 101 Conversation Starters. And, that's a pretty decent book to just make you learn how to ask questions that you might really want to know the answer to related to people that a person that you're dating. So, things like that. So none of this is rocket science because you're not asking them hard math or electrical engineering type questions. You're just trying to get to know one another. You might get an answer that's very numeric oriented because Darcy likes to ask me questions and I answer in numbers because I'm a numbers oriented person. So we laugh about that too. Can I answer a question without using a number?
Yeah, right.
So yeah.
I can.
Well, it sounds like the overall guideline is kind of be interested. Don't worry
Mhm.
about if you are interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
you're worried about, am I interesting enough? Is he going to find me interesting? Then you're just thinking about yourself only, and you won't be as concerned with being interested in that person's life.
Mm.
Right. If you get your eyes off yourself and onto the other person, yeah, it makes for much more comfortable conversation for sure.
Yeah. And tying it back to our kind of opening where we were talking about Hinge and this desire for deep conversations, I think in so many relationships, you see how sometimes like silly questions or silly conversation starters of like, even like, what's your favorite candy can lead to more in depth conversations because it's like, oh, I have a funny story from my childhood about that. And so I think removing the pressure of like, I have to ask the most important and well versed question to find out exactly what drives them in life and what they're so passionate about. I think sometimes that puts people on the spot, like you guys said, like an interview, versus this organic way of people getting to reveal who they are in conversation. One of my favorite things that I'm trying to get better at, my colleague does this so well, and I'm trying to learn it from her, is she'll always say, "Tell me more about that." And so
Yeah.
if you start to see someone in like a first date, like they're starting to get like really like excited about something or they shared a really fun story and you're like, "Let's talk about tell me more about that." Like I'd love to hear more about your so inviting even that space to go deeper if you notice it starts to and you're like, "I really would love to like maybe they start share a story about their family. You're like, tell me more about your family. And that wasn't even the conversation starter, but that's where it went. So I think it's good if you're a planner to maybe have some things planned in the back of your mind, but be open to spontaneity. And then if you're a spontaneous person, to maybe plan 2 questions, because maybe that's like, so maybe do a little bit of something that you're not good at, but always be inviting more. And I think that's how you're going to end up getting to those organic, deep conversations in a way that's not like, well, what was the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your whole life? And then you both leave and you're like, that was the weirdest
You're
first
like,
date of all
I feel
time.
really heavy after that date.
So what is the opposite of a spark?
You know, I don't really think I had that much fun.
I got the ick. I did not get the spark. I have to block that person's number because I regret everything I've ever said.
Then also, it's like, to avoid having it be like a job interview, you want to share some about yourself that can relate to their answers, but you don't want to rely solely on that, because then it would end up being they share something and then you have to relate to what they said. You have to say something about yourself in response to them. So you want a mix of, I'm going to ask you questions and I'm also going to share a little bit about myself as you answer.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And
I think back to those like dates too. And I think one of you said, if you're just sitting across a table or sitting at a movie or whatever, I mean, it doesn't lend itself to conversation, or it's uncomfortable, if you just only have the other person to look at. So doing something kind of active where you're walking or, somewhere, maybe side by side, and
freezing like crazy in an ice palace in the middle of the winter, you're walking and you're talking and whatnot. And, again, it goes back, I said it earlier, and I think Danielle expanded on it. You don't just ask questions, but you react to the answers and, tell me more, or you start, something that illustrates that you were actively, engaged. Because it is tough with cell phones, especially, to unengage so fast and engage with a totally different person or persons in a conversation that doesn't have to be verbal. It's just you went to look at your phone and whatnot. So yeah.
And awkwardness on a first date, I also think, is a little bit okay. So I think learning to be a little bit comfortable with a little bit of awkward is going to make you more successful, because there is no reason, I think, when you're meeting someone maybe for the first time on a date, or you've known this person but you're now like in a romantic setting for the first time, sometimes there's a little bit of awkwardness. And I think, again, with our phones and a digital age, we do not allow ourselves to sit in boredom or awkwardness for very long periods of time. We always have the option to opt out of that. And so I think it will take practice in those dates. Like, if there were some awkward moments, that also doesn't mean it didn't go well as a first date. So the fear of awkwardness is not something I think you really need to go into a first date with. I think you should assume there might be some awkwardness, and that will be totally okay. Some people are naturally really good talkers right off the bat. Some people are more reserved, and they might like need a couple dates to really like blossom, and you'd be like, wow. I also think I've heard, and I don't know what this is based on, but that men and women are able to be vulnerable in conversation differently. Like, men do better side to side, like an activity where they're like watching a game, and women do better maybe like making more eye contact across the table. And so, like you guys were saying, alternating these types of dates, I also think gives the biggest chance of both people, maybe they're comfortable in different settings, being able to be vulnerable and open up and have comfortable conversations. So if it's awkward on the first date, maybe it's not as comfortable for one person or the other, but don't be afraid of awkwardness on the first date.
Yeah, you asked about questions. Here's a great one. What's been your worst date ever? Are you on it right now?
You're like, just be honest. Just tell me now.
Just be honest. Is this the worst date or the best date you've ever had? There are only two options, and this will determine the future.
No, maybe not ask that one. That's a second date question.
A second date question. It could be a funny story.
Yeah.
Maybe for your next date. But speaking of all maybe that you want to ask on the first date and what you want to talk about, what maybe would you not want to share on a first date? And what questions might be too much early on. Now, again, we want to preface this. Every person's different. Some people might just be really into these questions right away, and that's not wrong. But in general, as we think about like what's probably a good progression of things, what would you say is best to maybe not share or talk about on the first date?
Things that sound a little too eager, where you're just like, I'm really like wanting to rush this relationship thing along. So maybe things like, you know, do you have any interest in ever getting married? Or how many
kids you want to
children do you
have?
want? Yeah, that kind of thing. How much money do you make? Things
Oh, wait,
that
you asked me that.
I
No,
did
I'm kidding.
not. Um, Talking about past relationships or exes, I think would probably not be a great top first few dates. I think complaining about everything, yeah, or anything. But then maybe if you're a complainer, it's probably good that you complain because then they know you're complaining or the person is complaining.
At least you're just being honest about who you are up front.
Right. You'll figure it out eventually. Yeah. So yeah.
And then there are the obvious ones like your social security number, your address, your garage code. We don't want to share those on the first few dates, et cetera, et cetera.
And she doesn't mention that complaining part because that's not me. I don't really complain ever.
Right.
I've been accused of having too much of a positive outlook on life. So
I balance it out.
That's right.
Richard had the opposite problem, whereas Darcie is like, I can't get him to complain about anything. Everything's always sunshine and rainbows. I can't do this anymore.
Is he real?
Unless it's identity theft.
Yep. Don't even get him started on identity theft. It's not a joke.
That's right. Not everything.
I think another one could be good of like not sharing every single nitty-gritty detail of your testimony, of everything you've gone through and gotten free from, or every detail of that in the first few dates, because I feel like Christians are probably the most guilty of that because they want to get close quick. You want to connect with a person, but it isn't necessarily connecting all the time to just share every part of your testimony immediately. It could just be oversharing and you're trying to connect, but it's not quite connection.
Yeah, overshare. That's a great term.
That's a good point.
No need to overshare.
Yeah.
I think if it works organically, I think that's a great one, Jenny, because I think in the rush, like you said, or the deep desire to have those deep conversations, to feel known, it's like, well, I have to tell you like I said, the worst day of my life, and I will tell you right here. And I just got out of jail 1 day ago, and then, it's like all these things, and someone's like, oh my gosh.
You're probably wondering about this teardrop tattoo I got.
So
I just wanted to go out to a nice, fun dinner. I didn't think I'd be giving a free therapy session. So there's a fine line of like, you will have time to get into these things. You can share some about yourself, but knowing that if you continue dating, that will organically come out. And there's no need to be like, okay, well, you need to know all of this. I guess unless it's something super serious that maybe they should know at the beginning. Although I can't think of an example of what that might be.
Right, because there isn't a guarantee of a second date. It's just getting to know another person, seeing where it goes. Yeah,
that's right.
So
enjoy the time that you're with, and then just try to get to know the person.
For our last question, we just have to know from both of you, what is the one piece of dating advice you would share with Gen Z?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, and I don't know if it's for Gen Z necessarily, but to truly be able to fully give of yourself and grow in a relationship, you must first be content with who you are. So yeah, I think that could apply to any generation, but it's hard to really invest in someone else and give to someone else unless you're content with where you are, and I think that makes all the rest of it much more comfortable and organic, like you were saying, Daniel.
Kissing and holding hands is fun. But character integrity, is going to matter more than chemistry in the long run. And our chemistry has been great since day one. And we love each other. And, what were you telling me the other day? We had to kiss for 22 seconds.
I read that.
And
I was like, for a happy relationship, no, it wasn't 22 seconds. It was minutes. It was like 22 minutes a day. It wasn't 22 seconds. I was like,
that's too long.
We gotta go now.
For all this kissing.
I gotta actually hang up soon. My kissing is coming up, and I can't.
My kissing 22 minutes starts in about 30 seconds.
I remember where I read that.
But regardless of what the number is, that's all really wonderful, as well as other things that come along with marriage. But character and integrity always are going to matter more than chemistry, because if character and integrity are there, then you've got a person that you're going to be with, and they're going to guard their heart, they're going to guard your heart, and the chemistry, it just happens.
Yes. Well, I think that is just really good advice. I think that it makes it easier how you set up your relationship in the beginning to then how you continue it through. And when you are leading with character and integrity, and that's what you're looking for, then exactly right. I think the chemistry will follow. The spark will follow. The spark will come if maybe it didn't happen already on just the first date. But we just want to thank you, Richard and Darcie, for being here and being our guests and sharing your wisdom with us. Jenny and I can vouch for seeing the last, we know each other almost 4 years now, 5 years of just wonderful marriage that we've gotten to listen to their wisdom in person and just watch them together. And so we just wanted to share them with you all as just a really great resource for dating that continues into a successful and beautiful marriage. So hopefully you're able to learn something, get some ideas for a date, maybe relieve some of that first date anxiety. And we will see you in our next episode, which is our final episode number 10, where we will have 2 other very special guests, which you'll have to come back and see. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.